So in this one we'll be start looking at the session hijacking and both of the network and the client level. So we are going to be talking about the TCP, UDP and also man in the browser attack. And so while this while is still session hijacking is a very different threat to what we have been seen in terms of session hijacking in a web application. So let's go and take a look about what I am going to cover in this one. So we are going to predominantly network level focus throughout the remainder of this, and we'll get one thing really close upfront, and we'll talk about the network level session hijacking, and this is the risk we have to largely pass now. So certainly when you look at where the proportion of hijacking attacks are, but in modern days of application and network, it's at the web layer of the network and the network layer form a very small part of session hijacking takes today. So this is a little bit of, as I said here, a remnant of a bygone era. Now the reason I am including it is because if you are working toward your switch network, and level session hijacking is one of the things they talk about. But as you will see, we will progress through this one, and most of these examples are presence of a TCP level hijack in particular, and some are old, but it may be an interesting history lesson, so we are going to cover it here. We are just not going to go as in depth, but we are going to just for the web application light. Now when we talk about the network level session and the session hijacking, we are talking about the layer 4 of the OSI model, and that's the network layer so far. So we have been only looking at layer 7, which is actually up at the app layer. So we are going to get down to the lower in the stack, and as we progress you will see the different level of details to what we have seen before. So we have actually going to be looking at the pocket level on the network layer. Now firstly I mentioned that we are going to be looking at both TCP and UDP, and if you are not already aware of the difference between these two protocols, don't worry, I am going to make it clear that we can go into this, and I will explain how the risk of session hijacking differs between the two, because they are pretty much fundamentally different communication protocols. And finally we are going to take a look at the risk of the client. So we are actually going to talk about a man in the browser attack, whether client software is compromised. So not in the application here, not the network here, but the browser running on the victim machine. So that's a quite different attack vector when the attacker can actually control what's inside on the operating system or within the browser. So that's what we are going to look at. Let's move on and start to understand the TCP protocol and understand the TCP protocol a little bit better before we start looking at session hijacking across it. So here is the TCP level session hijacking attack. So we are going to look at and its IP spoofing. Now when we talk about the IP spoofing is the attack that it doesn't need to guess the sequence number or get to the middle of the communication, because there's not necessarily a connection or already open with the target machine. IP spoofing for the purpose of network level session, and which is the session hijacking, and it takes advantage of source and route package. So this is where the sender of a packet can partially or completely specify the route, and the packet takes the network. So let's take a look how this works. So firstly, let's bring our attacker in. Now attacker is going to determine the IP address of a trusted host. Once they've got it, they can construct what's referred to as a source route packet. So that's a packet where the sender actually determines the route it is going to take. So obviously this is all dependent on the environment, and which allowing the source routed as opposed to delegating the routing to actual owner, and because of the actual router, but doing that the attacker is able to fool the server into believing that it's communicating with the victim. So effectively they're supposed to do that address, and they've just sent the packet to the target machine. Now once they do that, they can desynchronize the connection with the victim and resume it themselves. So that's IP spoofing. There are a number of things that have to be very specific in place, that is specific network environment for it to happen, but certainly that is the one mechanism of TCP level session, and which is the session hijacking, and that's the end of the TCP. So let's look at to protect against the IP spoofing. So use the strong verification and authentication method for all remote access, and do not authenticate devices and uses solely based on IP address. Makes an SEL of IP addresses, and use both ingress and egress packet filtering, and use antivirus and other security software that watches the suspicious network activity, and use IP level encryption protocol to protect traffic going to and from the enterprise server. This approach keeps attacker from reading potential IP addresses to impersonate, and keep network software updated, and practice good patch management, and performing ongoing network monitoring can help to protect against this IP spoofing.